Good morning. It's 9:30 a.m. here, so let's get started. Welcome to our HiNotes webinar. I'm Athena Caballero, HR Consulting Manager and Glorified Answer Seeker here at Higher Level, a woman-owned human capital management company. I work out of our Marion, Illinois location, and on this sunny but cold, chilly winter day, I really wish I was on the beach in Maui. I am joined by Julie Hoff, founder, president, and principal consultant of Cultivate HR. Welcome, Julie. If you could take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're located, and your favorite place to vacation.
Sure. Hi, Athena. Good morning. I am super excited to be here with all of you. It is freezing cold here. I'm located just outside of St. Louis. And as Athena mentioned, I am the founder and consultant at Cultivate HR. So I have spent about the last 20 years in HR, and last fall launched my own consulting company. So I'm super excited to partner with Higher Level. They have been not only friends, but really good partners, and excited to chat with all of you today. So I definitely have a countdown clock going on. Anything sunny and a beach is my place to be, and I will be heading to Florida the end of February. So that's on my list for vacation spots.
Yes, the countdown is here. I am excited for you. I need to see some pictures when you go.
Yeah.
So today we'll be discussing the hybrid work success plan from engagement to compliance. Just a few housekeeping things before we begin. This call will last approximately 60 minutes and will be recorded. You're set up in listen-only mode. Questions and comments can be posted throughout the webinar via the chat feature on the GoToWebinar, and Julie and I really would love to have you all collaborate and engage with us during the webinar. We'll do our best to respond to your chats during the webinar, but we will have a Q&A time built out at the end. Before we dive in to increase engagement, which we will be talking more about today, if you would share your job title, location, and your favorite place to vacation in the messaging chat feature, we'd love to hear from you. We'll give you just a moment. Maybe have some people still joining.
We see you out there. We know you're there.
Yeah, we show that we've got 8 people. Don't be afraid to speak up.
I'm sure we have some beach lovers. I feel like it's either, there's always this question, is it a beach? Is it a mountain? I like the idea of a mountain, but I feel like it's a little bit safer to be hanging out on a beach personally. So
yeah, you're making me think of some volcano eruptions we've seen lately, and yeah, absolutely agree there. So really what we want to do is make sure today that we share some best practices with you all and ensure that we cover any material that you're wanting specifically to learn about today. So if you have not already put something in the chat, if you want to put maybe what you're looking to take away today. And otherwise, we'll get started. So right now, we know that hiring is hard. And based on a lot of our attendees being heavily within the HR sector, I know Julie and I can both relate to the struggle that many of you have probably felt in the last couple of years as we've acclimated to the new normal. And we want to talk today about how obviously we've all had to constantly adjust, pivot, and change as guidance and compliance, legality, and what's the word I'm looking for? All of that kind of is changing and is also fluid. So we're going to talk about that as well. And I just wanted to mention that some success that companies have seen during this uncertain time has been because they've adopted new ways to engage their employees, and in many cases have actually seen productivity rise in a hybrid work model. So of course, we're going to let Julie talk a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. We've also seen some other companies where they've tried to maintain business in kind of crisis mode. Others have adopted a wait and see attitude or methodology, and others are just kind of business as usual. So today we'd like to share strategies to be successful and ensure compliance when using a hybrid work model. And Julie and I were just chatting today. We thought, of course, at the end of the month, we know a lot of people have set New Year's resolutions. So this is maybe a time to kind of bring back, if they've kind of fallen to the wayside, what you're going to do and how you're going to continue to keep that top of mind throughout the year. So I'm going to let Julie talk a little bit about what we're going to be talking more about during this call today or this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to spend a few minutes here talking a little bit about sort of the definition of a hybrid workplace, how that impacts your culture. Then we're going to spend, a good portion of time really reviewing some practical strategies to help sort of either improve or maintain your employee engagement and how that impacts the employee experience. Athena is going to spend some time reviewing some compliance considerations. She was even just sharing a tip with me that I didn't know about before our call this morning. And we've got some really cool resources and tools at the end that we want to leave you with. And then, of course, we want this to be interactive. So we will certainly save some time for questions at the end.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you.
so let's get started. Okay, so interesting. I'm excited to talk about hybrid work because it's one of those things you really can't turn on the news or pick up an article or get on LinkedIn without hearing about hybrid work. And so as you kind of dive into it, hybrid work really is different in each organization. And probably the definition of it isn't the most important part, but really it's, thinking about how it's relevant or applicable to your organization. Typically a hybrid work environment is going to include some blend of working at home or working in the office. And so we'd love to hear from you what's been going on in your workplace. But really, how you structure it and what mechanisms you put in place, what behaviors you might expect from your organization is really kind of how you help prepare yourself for that hybrid work environment. So how will the hybrid work model impact your culture? How will employees communicate with each other? How will they communicate with colleagues and vendors? Introducing that hybrid work model really offers a great opportunity to think about how it impacts your corporate culture. And it's an opportunity to, in some ways, reset or reevaluate maybe some of the things that you were doing in the past and how you might want to do those go forward. How do you want your employees to show up every day? How do they collaborate when they're in the office or at a location? How do they collaborate when they're at home? What needs might they have to create, you want that innovation, you want it to be inclusive. And, how do you put things in place to encourage that when you're navigating, away from maybe that traditional brick and mortar where everyone was in person interacting with each other sort of in the way that you were used to? Do you need to offer new guidelines or guardrails? And this is really where, I've seen as I've been supporting clients and then even myself, each organization's tolerance for flexibility and sort of rules and policies and guide rails is a little bit different. And so really having a good sense of what your culture is like, what the leadership is comfortable with, and then how you can help influence those decisions to really form that hybrid work strategy. Many of you have probably spent a lot of time on, if you're in HR or even if you're a manager, you spent a lot of time on the safety considerations associated with hybrid work. And perhaps you might have even made some adjustments to the physical space where your employees are coming in. And even Athena is going to talk about considerations for those that might be working in a home office, workers' comp considerations, et cetera. So there certainly, is a lot that goes into thinking about the hybrid work. Some of you may have moved to it out of necessity back in 2019, and now you might be going back to reevaluate what's working. Either way, I always say it's never too late to pivot or adjust. Flexibility really is the key. And I think as many of you are wearing multiple hats, you're probably leading teams and doing work and thinking about hybrid work. Just because you put a plan in place at some point in time doesn't mean that it's set in stone and that it can't evolve. So thinking through the details, which you probably have done maybe a couple times and are getting ready to redo, really helps provide some clarity to the employees that you're supporting. And really at the end of the day, we want to sort of run the business and we want the business to be successful, and that's accomplished through the people that do the work. So one of the easy ways that I think you can really sort of set yourself up for success with the hybrid work environment is think about what questions you have for yourself. So maybe you're someone who moved to work from home and now you're going back a couple days, or maybe you never left the office or the location and you've introduced some flexibility. Make your list. What are the things that are on your mind? What questions do you have? And likely those are going to be similar questions to those that you're trying to support. It's always a great time to solicit feedback and hear out what others are thinking. Oftentimes I think that you can sort of make that overly complex by doing really detailed surveys. Sometimes it's just picking up the phone and calling 10 people that you work with and saying, hey, how's it going? What's on your mind? What do you need? What do you have? What's working well? Doing those informal touch bases is a really nice way to not only connect, but to get some good feedback. So as you can tell, I get really excited about this and I start to talk faster, so I'll have to slow down. But there's a ton of good information out there. And there are two sort of scholars in the HR data space. And I was reading one of their articles, which we have linked in the tools, from Tom Davenport and Tom Redman. And one of the quotes that they said really just stuck with me. I hadn't thought about it this way, but work arrangements adopted during and after the pandemic are likely to persist for decades. So it's worth the trouble to get it right. And I think, we've sort of been in this wait and see mode and things have felt very temporary, and you're always planning for the next 3 months, 6 months, or what's right in front of you. But it's such a great opportunity to really think ahead and recognize that this is the future of work and you have a direct impact on sort of how that plays out for your organization. And when you think about it through that mindset, it feels sort of like such a fun and achievable thing to do, even though it can be very stressful and a lot of work. You really are planning for the future of your workforce. So with that, I thought maybe we could pivot a bit and talk a little bit about employee engagement and the employee experience.
Absolutely. Are you good with that, Julie? Would you like to talk about? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I will get us started here. So I felt like we couldn't talk about employee engagement or experience without a quote from Stephen Covey. And I really love this quote because I think it helps bring us back to center. Always treat your employees exactly as you want them to treat your best customer. And I like to think about it as ourselves, as consumers, as customers. And when you have a really amazing customer experience, that came from an engaged employee, most likely. If they were feeling really engaged and really excited about the work they were doing, they likely created that moment that mattered for you. So I think it's a good way to, really kind of think about employee engagement and how it translates into your business and the work environment. So there's a ton of good information out there about employee engagement and experience. And I certainly don't claim to be the expert on all things, but I've got a couple sort of practical tips that I think anyone could implement regardless of your business is, on-site production, you're in a corporate environment. Athena will say this, and Athena, I probably have said this a million times since you told me, but people work for people. And so regardless of who those people are, there are some sort of constructs around engagement experience that hold true. One of the things that sort of really resonated with me, I've got it here on the screen and we'll talk about it, is the opportunity to create moments that matter for your employees. And particularly in times of change and uncertainty, there's some ways to really think about how you make moments that matter in your workplace. McKinsey also has some really great research out there, and one sort of good tidbit that I captured from an article that I really liked is that leaders should focus on deeper listening and meeting their workforce where they are today and embrace the opportunity to experiment. You know, I think sometimes when you're in a sort of, you have a lot going on and you're trying to navigate hybrid work on top of it, you know, an engagement strategy on top of all the things you have to get done, sometimes experimentation can feel a little uncomfortable, and flexing and adjusting may feel uncomfortable, but it's such a great time to try new things, and employees really appreciate when you are open to changing strategies and thinking differently. So don't be afraid to do that. I've linked a couple articles here at the end that give you some good frameworks and things to think about around moments that matter and how you can flex and be a good listener. So let's kind of dig in. I'm all about practical, and I want you to at least walk away with 2 or 3 things you could do tomorrow. So think about engagement. I've got a couple different areas. We're going to talk about communications and technology. We're going to talk about recognition. I'll also talk about training, benefits, and mental health awareness. So first, let's talk about communications and technology. So I will be the first to say, like, I'm sort of medium savvy on technology. I definitely have had to get more comfortable that it may not always go well. You may not always be able to hear me great, or maybe my video is not going to work, and that can be really stressful. And so I think it's a great opportunity to check in with your team and find out what communications and technology solutions are you using that are working for them. Is there anything you can do that would make it easier? Are there things that you're using that you don't need to use? Do you need every Zoom call to have video? Do people like a casual text chain to communicate? Do they like Teams? Do they hate Teams? So much like sort of everything, we're just inundated with a lot of technology, and it's great, and it absolutely plays a role in connecting us all. It's a good time to sort of see if folks need some training. Athena was just sharing with me, you know, there's this cool thing out on LinkedIn where you can sort of record yourself. There's just a ton out there. Before you get overwhelmed with it, because there's so much, I think you could always check in and just get a pulse for how people are feeling. You can use non-tech communication strategies. So if you're in a production environment or you have employees who are on site, do you have a stand-up huddle meeting in the morning? Do you have ways that you can communicate to them that may not be email or technology enabled? And do your managers feel comfortable and prepared to sort of communicate regularly in ways that meet the workforce where they're at? So, you know, you can always sort of sit down, do a focus group with a diverse group of managers or employees and get their feedback on what's working well and what they'd like to see in the future. And really then, you know, maybe investing some time into looking at what you're doing today. If you're fortunate enough to have a communications resource, they're always, you know, communications professionals are always really good at offering strategies on how you can do things more efficiently. And you can go lo-fi too. You know, I worked in an environment where we had a pharmacy, and our employees, you know, they weren't on email, and technology really wasn't going to be the way to communicate to them. So we did poster boards in the break room. We did video screens, and we even posted things on the back of the bathroom stall. So it's okay to be creative and find ways to reach your employees. Really, the key is just to do it. just to communicate. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't always have to look bright and shiny. They will just appreciate hearing from you regularly and finding a way that you can do it that's sustainable. So let's talk a little bit about recognition. This is one of those areas, and I love this quote from Mary Kay, who is a female entrepreneur who built an amazing enterprise. There are two things that people want more than money: recognition and praise. So this is something that is really a $0 opportunity. And much like many things, recognition has become really complicated. There's a ton of systems, platforms, tools, resources, but really at the end of the day, recognizing people for the good work they do is an easy thing to do to keep them engaged and make the experience really positive. And I'm sure many of you think back to a time when you worked for someone who was awesome at this, who you felt like just nailed it. They probably did things like remembered your birthday. They knew about your family. They recognized your service anniversary with, flowers or balloons or something that made you feel really special. And think about the things that they did, and are those things that you could do. In my past life, I mentioned the pharmacy. We had 75% of the organization was an hourly population. And we had an executive who would go on site visits, and she would bring these little coins, and she would walk the floor and hand out these coins when she saw good work. And when I would go back to the pharmacy later, after she had left, it could be 6 months later, could be a year later, people would have these coins up. And what an impact she made by something that was really inexpensive, and it was like on the spot recognition. So I think there's a couple things you could do here. People love to be recognized from a peer. So if you don't have a peer recognition program, and by program, it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be anything from recognition cards. People love something physical that they can get. It's to encourage people to recognize over technology platforms, on social media. You can give a shout out on LinkedIn. And if you don't have a peer recognition program, find someone who's really passionate about that. Maybe they're outside of HR, they're not a manager, and say, hey, we'd really love to have a peer recognition program. Are you interested in helping? And you would be amazed at what others want to do to contribute to make it a really positive work environment. I also worked on a team where we launched engagement champions. I think some of you are probably on the call, so you would remember that. But this was a separate group of individuals who were really just focused on recognition and rewards, and they helped drive some of that throughout the organization. So I think, you can always use others to help spread cheer and happiness, and it will pay out twofold. That's one of the things I love about higher level. There is not a day that goes by that I don't see something, whether it's on LinkedIn, or Athena and I have shared. There's many things that the team does just to really reinforce that recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. We have actually, when you were just talking about the peer recognition, we have 3 key beliefs that we kind of hold, tried and true as part of our true north here at Higher Level. And so it's just a high five. We can send it as an email to the entire company, shout out to this person, they owned their impact, whatever it was that they did. And then we also have a certificate that we can send to them virtually. They can print it out if they are, a hybrid or remote worker. So yeah, it's a really, really easy way for us to communicate and keep everyone engaged, and that recognition. And that's in addition, we're doing, virtual birthday toasts. We did one last Friday. We all, jumped onto Teams. It was like the Brady Bunch, and just, a quick happy birthday or happy anniversary, or, congratulations on the new baby. And it's just an email that goes out to the entire team, so we all kind of know what's going on, as we are spread out not only between our physical brick and mortar offices, but as well our remote and hybrid workers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you guys do a fantastic job. I'll show you, give them some branded merch. I've got my cup. I use this all the time. Of course, I'm a company of one over here, so I have to support and recognize my own self. But, it's kind of taking it back to what I shared about moments that matter. Employees really want an integrated work experience. You don't bring your work self, and your home self is different. And so there are so many amazing opportunities throughout the year to recognize good work and to reinforce people. And, we've heard a lot about it. It's really not about money. The number one reason employees still leave organizations is their manager. And so if you are a manager who invests that time and energy, you really will see that relationship sort of blossom and grow. And, I think back to all the leaders I've had over the years, and those that were good at recognition were the ones I really wanted to work for. So, there's a ton we could talk about on recognition, but I'll move on. I shared a little bit about training as you think about technology, but it's also a really great time to look at what do you have available in terms of training and what might be things that you want to consider. For those of you that may not be part of a large organization or don't have a huge budget, or even those that do, there's a ton of great free training available. So you can go out online, on LinkedIn in particular. I've used a ton of their online training. If you want to invest a little bit of money, there's creative things like master classes. There's a ton of great, I think of training less of classroom training. Now, certainly that's an aspect of it. But when you think about how you develop as a person, putting together a helpful list of podcasts or influencers or articles that you think people might be interested in. It's a great time to be creative and to step away from maybe the traditional way that training has been approached. But first, I think it's always good to ask people what they want. What do they want? What do they need? And then coming up with ways to meet them with what they're looking for. So training is such a sort of a big box to unpack. There's certainly, I'll call them lo-fi, easy to do things that are out there and free. And then there's more robust LMS in-person training. But I think, getting a good sense for what your team needs and asking them is a little bit like recognition. People want the tools and resources to be successful at their job, and training is a big part of that. So it's a great time to reach out and do a little bit of a pulse check on what your team needs, and then think about what you might be able to do over the course of the next year to support them in those efforts. Benefit and leave programs. I don't want to underestimate how important that is in your engagement or experience strategy, and in particular now, as people think about themselves, mental and physical health and wellness, what things do you have in place to help support them? If your organization has an employee assistance program, many of those benefits have been expanded. I know for me personally, in my past life, I've leveraged EAP, everything from, legal advice, adoption assistance, and some of the new enhancements around, mental health and wellness. Other organizations have been really creative. For example, they give discount programs around wellness, Weight Watchers, or different wellness strategies. Athena, will you share what Higher Level's doing? You mentioned to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're right now doing the faster way. So we have our Facebook page to hold ourselves accountable. We talk about meal planning. It's a really great program, but the best part is it's a collaboration of our team actually coming together to lead healthier lifestyles. So yeah, I was telling Julie, it's eating right, meal planning, exercising regularly, which really in turn does affect your mental health. So in just the 4 weeks or 3.5 weeks that I have been on the program, I'm sleeping better. I'm drinking the water that I actually should be. I'm just being a lot more intentional in obviously what I'm putting into my body. But again, the biggest piece that's really great here at Higher Level is us working together. People are posting their pictures of what they made for dinner, their macros for the day, and we're just cheerleading each other. So it's a really fun extra program that our owner, Teresa, has offered and wanted us again because she cares about our mental health and our physical health as well, for us to be healthy and start off 2022 right. So it's been really, really great.
Awesome. That's such a great example. And if you need to know more about that, Athena can share what they're doing. Such a great way to show you care and to just sort of demonstrate that commitment, not only to the work that people are producing, but their mental and physical health. So it's a good time to check in, and also check with your benefits broker, check with your providers and your vendors to see what new enhancements they may have made. And even though you've probably already been through annual enrollment, really your opportunity for the rest of the year is communicating those benefits. Oftentimes, EAP is the most underutilized benefit, and with a little bit of education and communication on it, I think you'll see that people might be more inclined to use it and benefit from it. You're already paying for it, so I would look at your EAP and reinforce that.
Absolutely,
Okay,
Julie.
so,
I know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know absolutely, especially with telemed, a lot of the plans are offering, I mean, you can actually get on a virtual call with a mental health provider and actually, speak to a counselor, et cetera. So yeah, definitely be communicating, the benefits of your program that you're offering to your employees.
Yep, for sure, for sure. So, I mentioned this earlier, the moments that matter, and really at the end of the day, and maybe some people would disagree with me, but I really don't think, you can't go wrong with implementing a new strategy, communication tool, offering more training, celebrating service anniversaries and birthdays. I think the real key is it's easy to be overwhelmed with everything that's happening. And I have been there. I think back to, so our HR team was supporting a virtual workforce, and you just felt like I couldn't just take on one more thing. I think the real key is to use your network and use your resources and rely on others in the organization. And then if you need help or you're stuck or you want an idea, give us a call. We're happy to help. But the real key is just to take some action. If you leave this call today and you think this is the one thing I'm going to do to improve engagement for myself, my team, or others, I think you'll look back 2 weeks from now and say, wow, that was really worth the effort. So hopefully some of those practical tips were helpful for you. And like I mentioned, we're happy to answer questions along the way.
Yeah. Julie, before I go into my part, I wanted, will you share your say, stay, and strive? Do you have that?
Yeah. Okay. Just give me just 1 second.
Yeah, it's just, I really loved when you talked about that, and I just felt like that would be a really good end to the recognition and praise piece.
Yeah. So, for those of you who love like a little thing to remember, and we can send this out to you. So I found this through Aon Hewitt. Well, they're not Aon Hewitt anymore, but Aon, who's a consulting company. Sort of when you think about engagement and you want to see how it shows up, they have something it's kind of easy to remember. So an engaged employee is going to say, they're going to speak positively about the organization, their coworkers, their clients, or friends. So they're going to say things that you're going to hear that let you know they're engaged. They're going to stay. So they're going to talk about the future of the organization, the future of their work, and the impact that it has. And then they're going to strive. They're going to feel motivated to provide extra effort for the company. So if you're kind of not sure where someone is on your team and how engaged they might be, kind of listen. What do they say? What do they sort of talk about the future? And are they striving for kind of the future success of the company or themselves? And if you're feeling like maybe they're not as high as you'd like them to be, it's always a good time to check in. If any of you have ever done a stay interview, and we could give you a sample if you haven't done one, it's such a great time to sit down with your team and check in. and see how they're doing and what are you hearing, and then taking some of these strategies that we've talked about, and if you haven't implemented them, kind of putting some of those in place. Usually people will tell you. They may not come right out and say it, but you're going to pick it up in the conversations that you're having, or kind of how you see them show up. So that might be the stay interview. I'm glad you asked this, Athena. The stay interview is such a great way to get a gauge for how people are feeling.
Absolutely. And that is absolutely a service that we can help with. I would like to take this time really quick before we shift into the statistics and trends and compliance piece to just see if anyone would like to speak up in the chat and tell us if they currently have a hybrid work model in place or are thinking about implementing one in 2022. Got a quiet crowd out there today, Julie.
It's cold. I'm telling you, I had to my puppy out this morning and she did not want to budge. So I think, it's a little cold. We need to warm up.
I agree. Well, we'll go into statistics, trends, and compliance. Really want to kind of dive in on that. So we did, of course, see mass resignations that started in April of 2021. And I just read, obviously, we just keep reading these scarier and scarier statistics that are more concerning, but over 33 million people left their job last year. And actually, that's not, of course, that they left and didn't change to a different company or, that it's not that they're unemployed, but ultimately, I think Julie made a really valid point is going along with people work for people. People leave because of managers that they work directly under or organizations that they feel are toxic. So again, here at higher level, we keep obviously hearing not just throughout higher level, but being the great resignation. We're really trying to coin that positively as the time for it to be the great engagement. I know others have said, the great reset, et cetera. Julie's kind of talked about how we've pivoted and adapted and changed our methods of how we're going to, speak with our employees, keep them engaged, best practices, et cetera. But anyway, some other statistics that I had thought were interesting besides the ones that I have here on this slide are, of course, that 70% of people are reporting already in 2022 that they're thinking about leaving their job. So again, time to engage with your employees. And what does that really look like? I love, Julie, that you brought up a little bit about higher level and our culture here. And so I'd like to share with you all higher level's mission statement. Bringing people with diverse backgrounds together, creating opportunities, growing communities and business, changing lives. So it is imperative to capture the hearts and minds of your employees and workforce so that they really feel like they are part of your company and engaged. Again, during this time where things are kind of hectic and changing daily, rapidly, et cetera, I think that communication, Julie talked about, is really key. And it can be simple, just a company email about a new policy or something new that's going on, Anyway, so what we're really talking about too is, major trends in successful organizations is if, of course, they have empathetic leadership and managers, that does, of course, increase loyalty as well as employment well-being. You see, obviously, reduction in burnout, et cetera. So really important there. Wanted to mention, if you are on site and not having remote or hybrid workers, to maybe think again in that empathetic leadership. You may have a point system that maybe needs to be, looked at a little bit in terms of, are you going to discontinue it or change it? So again, you're not losing your really great people over things that are kind of at this time against, out of their control. So Julie did tell you about my favorite quote. So people work for people, not companies, and a worker's regard for his or her supervisor will affect his or her opinion of his or her employer. So Why is this so important in leadership? Especially in a hybrid or remote work model, your employee is most likely, most of the time, communicating with their direct manager or leader. So if that manager or leader is not engaging or active, has not listening to their employee, they're ultimately showing that employee what the culture of the company is, even if that's not an accurate depiction. So really remembering again that that can go both ways. You can have a really strong leader and a toxic culture, and employees then will be happy because they have that strong leader. But it can go the other way as well, negatively, where if that manager is not actually communicating the true company culture, the only thing that that employee has to go off of is that engagement and communication with their direct manager or leader. What I wanted to talk about as well for higher level things that we do, we talked a little bit about already, recognition, but along those lines as well, it can be just, again, really simple. Email to your own. We do Teams a lot. So Teams message, if you hear someone, they just had a really good call. I sometimes will just message the person right behind me, that was awesome, or turn around to them and say that. And so that, of course, for me is really important. And then let's go on to some soft skills that are important. Again, as we have more and more people really looking for the company culture and what that entails, their first line of communication typically is with their manager or leader. So again, a team mentality. That leader hopefully does a lot of recognition, doesn't have to be extraneous or even cost money. Again, it can be a printout of congratulations, great job, great effort, but really empowering your team. I know Julie mentioned as well that, of course, it's important that if you yourself don't maybe have time to put forth to those engagement activities, that you identify someone in your organization that has that passion and that really wants to own that and drive that. So what I would do, oh, actually, Julie, this is you. You get to tell us more about your stuff, and then I'm going to go into those last compliance resources.
Yeah, well, I could have probably put 500 resources in here, and so you have no idea how hard it was for me to narrow this down. But I thought I would just share a couple little nuggets of some good resources. So Doug Conant is a leadership guru that I love. He was the previous CEO of Campbell Soup. And he has a really interesting leadership academy. He hosts, as I mentioned, training. He hosts these boot camps that are free. And he brings on some really amazing thought leaders that are really focused on leadership and engagement. And the other thing, that second bullet, is every year he puts together kind of the best leadership links from the year with articles and podcasts. And man, if you read nothing else, that is a really great resource. I've stumbled upon this Talent Edge newsletter, which you can subscribe to via LinkedIn. That is an email that comes in. And I know we all hate email, or at least I do. I get so tired of email, but this Talent Edge is amazing. And it's really relevant, bite-sized chunks about the author. Man, I can't think of his name. It's Brian. He will take complex articles from McKinsey or all the consulting firms and break them down into really interesting bite-sized nuggets. And then I hit on these two articles, Managing the Moments That Matter from Concentric, which used to be the Aon Talent Strategy consulting arm. And then also this best articles on HR and people analytics, which might throw you, the people analytics part, but there's a ton of good information in here on hybrid work, the future of work, and just all the things that we're talking about. So last, I would just say Doug also has some podcasts. So if you're someone who's been trying to exercise, put this podcast on and take your walk. It'll be worth it.
I know, I'm so ready for some warm weather. That's my favorite exercise, is a brisk walk. Not when it's too briskly cold, though. What I wanted to, before we shift into my compliance resource slide, is, Julie, I just wanted to reference how we've had this conversation about backups for backups, training, etc. So maybe you want to talk about Broadway. I know you're a Broadway lover and how that's been affected.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you said that. So I love Hugh Jackman, and I follow him on Instagram, and he was just sort of sharing how he's in a Broadway play and they have understudies that support them. But through COVID, the understudy for his female companion in the play, she literally had about, 7 days, or actually, no, I take that back. It wasn't 7 days. It was a really short window of time to jump in and play the part of the lead. And so Athena and I were talking about, and this was something that really was a heavy lift, and I'm sure resonates with many of you, is really just the importance of business continuity, and how through all of the hybrid work, it's really for anyone who previously was trying to drive a workforce plan in the organization. It was always hard to get managers to think about workforce planning, to think about business continuity. And now to keep businesses open, you really have to be thinking about that. So it's relevant in all businesses, whether you're on Broadway or you're in the pharmacy or wherever you may be. It's a great time to dust off your business continuity plan.
Absolutely. And that's something Higher Level does offer as a service. We can talk about your existing, or if you need to build a continuity plan. But some things to think about in terms of, oh, I'm losing my option here. There we go. Got some compliance resources, but what I want to talk about really quick are some things to think about. So Julie did mention earlier, I was going to be talking specifically about compliance, especially in a hybrid or remote work model. So remembering that even if you have an employee working from home, if they are on the clock and they are injured at home and it is a reportable incident, you do need to report or record that on your OSHA log, just like it was on site. One thing I know maybe people are not always thinking about is labor law posters. So of course, when you're on site, most companies have, a bulletin board where they post those labor law posters that are updated typically annually. You normally have your federal and state. But if you have remote or hybrid workers, how are they actually accessing that? So here at Higher Level, we do have labor law subscription for both on-site and remote workers, so you can be completely compliant. And your employees that work remotely or hybrid, they would actually receive a virtual copy of that. Or of course, we do have our software as well for payroll. It has robust abilities. You can have a landing page, an intranet, where again, that can also increase engagement, give shout outs to employees, etc. But you could also have your labor law posters live there so that all employees, whether they're on site or remote, would have access to those. As well, just a reminder, I've kind of got all these websites here that are mostly government, but of course, Department of Labor, considering FLSA guidelines and compliance. So of course, do you have hourly employees? How are you tracking their time? Are you ensuring that if they work over 40 hours, they're compensated correctly? So what kind of timekeeping method are you using right now? That's another, of course, service Higher Level does offer as well. And then I know ever-changing COVID, I don't know if your company probably has already adopted or created a plan and had to change it. That's something I'm here to help with. I know the ETS did not go through, but many companies are still, of course, rolling out some type of vaccine plan with their company or COVID safety plan. If you've not already, I can help you with that. And then as well, as Julie and I were talking about before the call, thinking about taxation. So of course we pay taxes where we work, but if we work remotely from our home, then that's another implication that your company wants to consider in terms of compliance. So if it's remote, solely, then of course wanting to ensure that they are paying into the correct state of the taxes that they need to be, so that that doesn't come back to them or the company when they go to file their return. And then as well, thinking about local taxes, you may have, St. Louis City, for instance, has a local tax. So even if you have hybrid or remote workers, they still do need to pay that St. Louis City tax, of course, if that company is headquartered out of St. Louis or another city where you would maybe have a local. So that is something, again, that our software does track and pull in automatically when we put in both the employee's zip code and the company's zip code. It knows exactly what to do, and you're completely compliant. I'd love to talk to you more about what that looks like as well for your company to hopefully simplify your processes, as they are, of course, cumbersome right now. So as well, those business continuity plans. Right now we've got sunshine, but it's cold outside, so not just business continuity, but do you have like an inclement weather plan for your company? Do employees know who they should contact if they're not, going to be able to make it, or where they should go to find out information about office closures, etc. Again, we have that software where we could actually have a company set up to use the intranet piece. Employees would be able to log into that and see, oh, today actually we're doing a late start, or this office is closed and we're working from home, etc. So we can help with all of that. And then I have added a couple other resources here for compliance. SHRM, obviously a great place, and then just some fun ones that I found about how to keep essential and non-essential workers united. Again, really, I think communicating with them, capturing their hearts and minds, and really communicating the impact that their work is providing to the downstream of service that it, again, if it's an essential business, pharmacy, etc., they're helping people and really, really showing them. I think that's another opportunity as well that Julie and I didn't talk about was, we get client kudos and things like that sometimes onto, your website that may call out specifically someone who's done something really great, or just that, they're really happy that your company has continued to stay open and is providing a service. So I think sharing those as well with your employees is really important to continue to engage them as well. A couple others on here, one from Deloitte on employee engagement, and then a couple others of resources and tools, including actually how Julie had mentioned if you were wanting to design and manage a wellness program. So what does success look like? When you are working with either a remote or hybrid work model, and you take these best practices away on collaboration, engagement, and compliance, undoubtedly, like Julie mentioned, just that bit of effort is going to give you back a return twofold. Happier and more engaged workers, reduced attrition, decrease in absenteeism, increase in productivity, and enhanced and effective communication. I think Julie made a really valid point. Put yourself in your employee's shoes. What are you concerned about? What questions do you have? What resources do you need to be successful? Chances are your employees have those same questions. And then again, with those compliance pieces, you can have peace of mind knowing that your company is both on-site and remote compliant. So let's see here. I did want to just play devil's advocate when we talk about hybrid, some considerations, or remote. The collaboration, we talked about some really great resources, but obviously it is not the same as being on site with someone where you can just hop up from your desk, walk down the hall to their office and ask a question. As well, we have seen some studies show that lateral and development opportunities for diverse workforce has actually seen maybe a negative impact from the hybrid or remote work model. So just ensure that you are considering those things so that you are including and really engaging your entire workforce. And then what can we do for your business? So we actually right now are offering a free 30-minute consultation. That would be with myself. I would love to send you our HR Fit survey. It's a short 12-question survey. It asks you, of course, some things about compliance, etc., and it would really help drive that 30-minute consultation. Again, we do offer work comp and OSHA compliance training and guidance. We have that labor law compliance as well, and service, business continuity plan creation. And then I thought, of course, going back to what you had said, Julie, stay interviews. That's something great as well that we can help develop for you so that you can continue to engage with your employees. That ends pretty much the presentation. I'd really like to make sure Julie doesn't have anything to add, and then we'll dive into hopefully some questions from our audience.
I just wanted to thank you. This has been so much fun to just partner and collaborate. And, for those of you out there who are, clearly interested in this topic by joining today, let us know how we can help. Athena has a ton of great experience and has a lot of knowledge, and she is an answer seeker. So if there's a question that you don't know the answer to, she will help. And just thank everybody for giving your time this morning. It's been really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to leave this up here just for a second more to make sure we don't have any questions coming in. Julie, are you seeing any on your end?
I am not.
Okay, like we said, we've got a cold audience today.
It's time to work. I know I'm ready for another cup of coffee. So
right, yes, and I'm sure many people have got to get to it. And of course, this is recorded, so for those who are not unable or those who were unable to attend today, they will receive the recording. Otherwise, you can go to www.higherlevel.com to our webinar portal, and you'll be able to see all of our pre-recorded HiNotes webinars. So my appreciation to all that attended today. That concludes this Higher Level HiNotes webinar presentation. I would love to speak with you further about your 2022 business goals and how we can partner. And again, I would love to, reach out, send that HR Fit survey to you, and then schedule that free 30-minute consultation. Julie, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us today. I have had such a fun time as well. I know we could talk on and on about the engagement piece, because that's kind of where our hearts are. And then of course the compliance for myself. I do want to remind our attendees today that our next webinar will be on Wednesday, February 23rd at 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. We'll be having guest Andrew Metcalf. He's actually a lawyer, and the topic will be hitting the reset button on time and attendance policies. I hope you'll be able to join us. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.